So this presentation is about how I use social and sexual networking apps and work to remain an ethical and boundaried therapist. In my experience, very few therapists actually admit to even using these apps or indeed cruising, let alone share how they manage their personal and professional lives in doing so. And I think it's time we started to have a conversation about this. This is actually a very high-risk presentation because I'm going to be speaking more openly and more publicly about my life than I've ever done before. I identify as kinky, polyamorous, or non-monogamous in one of those many variations that Meg John's been talking about, as gay or queer or pansexual, and I have 3 long-term relationships, one of 19 years, another of 7 years, and the last has been running for about a year. So who says gay people can't do committed relationships? In addition to more casual relationships. So my presentation is situated amongst those personal experiences. And I appreciate that some of you may be monogamous, or seriously monogamous, serially monogamous, or even seriously. That's a nice slip of the tongue. Or asexual aromantics. And so I guess that much of what I have to say may not be very relevant to some of you. However, for those of you that are single or non-monogamous, I hope it might be useful. I'm aware that I'm fortunate in that I occupy a very privileged position running Kink therapy. I'm working exclusively with a really wide range of GSD-identified clients, and so I figure that I have an obligation to speak out on behalf of others who are not able to do so or might not feel confident in doing so. In particular, I'm mindful of those sexually active kinksters and poly people who are in training, as well as other GSD people working in more sensitive contexts, like with young people, where heteronormative judgments prevail. And our new mentoring scheme that we've been talking about is designed to support people in these processes. Just because I found my own way through this ethical and moral jungle, I'm not saying it's the only way, and that there are many ways. And I hope we'll be able to start a more open dialogue about how we do this by sharing our experiences and supporting each other to become better therapists. I've over 30 years of working with our communities, writing, co-editing the 3 textbooks with Charles Neal. I've trained thousands of therapists, and I have tens of thousands of hours of clinical practice and have founded Kink therapy. So I do have a kind of a comfortable position, in a sense, as being able to approach this. And we thought about this a lot, these issues a lot. 4 years ago, I started facilitating a space for kink-identified therapists called ACD Kink, or Advanced Clinical Discussions Kink. And that this is a topic that is a frequent subject for discussion. Probably not a meeting goes by where we don't have a bit of a conversation about living and working in our communities. One of the reasons, probably one of the principal reasons that people come to see me and to choose me as their therapist is my knowledge of the alternative sex communities. And I work with members of those communities of all genders and sexualities. And I'm listed in the Kink Aware Professionals Directory, which is a thing online, as Kink Knowledgeable, and they have 3 levels: Kink Friendly, Kink Aware, and Kink Knowledgeable being the one that's got the most experience. My starting point is to say that it's healthy to recognise that we have sexual and relational needs. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to use our community's resources and facilities to meet those needs. But being a therapist places an extra layer of responsibility on us as boundary riders to act ethically and professionally and to anticipate potential difficulties and challenges to the therapeutic frame. Much like cowhands riding the range and mending fences to keep the cattle safe, boundary riders are therapists who tend to maintain a safe therapeutic frame. In Kink Therapy Volume 2, Professor Lynn Gabriel and I co-authored a chapter which presents a model that she developed for managing dual relationships. She went on to publish her doctoral research in a very accessible book called Speaking the Unspeakable, and then went on to become chair of the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. And I put a link to our chapter on the slide that you can download it, because I think it's very useful reading if you've not already read it. There is a tension between being an integrated human being and being appropriately open about yourself. Therapeutic disclosure of sexual orientation is a hot topic for LGBT therapists, with at the moment 2 papers out or in production, including one of those in the latest journal of CPR, the Counselling and Psychotherapy Research Journal for BACP, that came out this week. And there is another by Adam Harris, who's a clinical psychologist in Lincoln. And I've been supervisor of his dissertation and co-author of a paper that's forthcoming in the Journal of Psychology and Sexuality. And I don't have time in this talk to go into TDSO, therapist disclosure of sexual orientation, but I may discuss this in a further presentation on YouTube. In many ways, we serve as role models to our clients, and we are human beings engaging in the same struggles as our clients. We're often challenging our own internalized sexual shame and guilt, and we have a responsibility at the same time to protect our clients or patients from knowing too much about us, as we are responsible for managing and holding the professional boundaries which keep the therapeutic space available for our clients to work in. What do our professional bodies say about how to manage the professional and personal relationships? Very little. The new ethical framework, which is still being worked on for BACP, and our Kink, ACD Kink group offered them significant feedback and practical suggestions. Brought a recent email from Professor Tim Bond, who's coordinating that project for BACP. And he said that our points had been discussed by the Ethics and Standards Committee and by the Expert Ethical Reference Group, which comprises largely of lawyers and philosophers. So they're really kind of thinking about these issues quite deeply. And he says, we tried to find a balance between the rights of clients and those close to them to be protected from unethical sexual activity with therapists, and the rights of therapists to have an adult sexual life outside their professional role. The current draft reads, we will not have sexual relationships with or behave sexually towards our clients. Fair enough. We will avoid having sexual relationships with or behaving sexually towards people whom we know to be close to our clients in order to avoid undermining our clients' trust in us. End quote. Given the small and overlapping communities that the kinky, poly, and gay people live in, it can be hard to know who's close to our clients. And whilst we might not knowingly have sex with someone's partner or best friend, it can, and indeed does, happen inadvertently. This guideline seems also to be premised on a heteronormative assumption that therapists should really be settled in committed monogamous relationships or be celibate. I'm aware of no current UK guidance for the use of social media, and we will be again consulting with the ACP on this because they're going to do separate guidance on social media in the coming year. Now, when we think about social media, there are the 3 main ones: LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. LinkedIn is where everybody wants to become your professional colleague and network with you, and they never speak to you ever again. And I get probably half a dozen of these a week or more. I don't know who these people are and why they want to network with me and then not talk to me. My advice is, on Facebook, is actually to consider having a separate professional profile to your personal one, and to lock the privacy settings down on the personal one very tightly. Be mindful of what you post and where you post it. If you only have one profile and you're using that for a personal rant, be aware that clients and colleagues can see this, and that can affect your professional reputation. Facebook is the primary concern for most mainstream therapists. But what do you do when you encounter your clients on sex apps, or when your clients encounter you? I'd recommend being very careful about using your face pic online alongside detailed information about what you're into and what you're looking for. I would say that this is probably TMI, too much information, for many clients and could cause difficulties. Personally, I think it's better to avoid a face on a public profile and then just send a face pic once you've seen who you're talking to. I'll give you a couple of examples from my own practice which illustrate some of the challenges of these new geolocation apps. Recon is a site for gay and bi men into fetish and kink, and a gay man was referred to me by a sexual health worker who was concerned about what he described as extreme BDSM when under the influence of chemsex drugs. And I asked the client, why might X, the worker, have had concerns about you? He said I should check out his Recon profile. I took a moment to reflect and made a calculated gamble and said that if I did so, he'd then see my profile and what I was into, and how might that affect our relationship and our work together. He said that he felt my being kinky was one of the reasons why he felt able to trust and work with me, though we had different interests. In terms of Grindr, I was messaged by a client who had his face pic on his profile, searching for older men, and he sent me in the course of the day several messages which I didn't respond to, and my face pic isn't in my profile, but he was just choosing the age band that he was into, and sent those messages. When he attended his next session, I mentioned the messages and discussed how this encroached on both of us enjoying a private life outside of therapy. We've been working in the session on his desire to be monogamous in his relationship, and these messages contradicted that. And I felt that he was revealing stuff to me that wasn't necessarily open for me, and because he hadn't chosen to tell me in the session. And so we agreed to mutually block each other at the end of the session to afford each other the necessary privacy to allow the therapy to continue. OkCupid is a very popular app with a large amount of poly and kink-aware people dating on there. There's a requirement for to use the app that, as a condition of being a member, you have your face pic on there. It's been my experience of working with these populations that they are generally much more liberal and open, and yet also recognise personal boundaries than some of the other populations that I work with. So I felt it's probably the only app where I would feel comfortable putting my face. I'm also talking about the gay cruising spaces, and I'm showing here kind of cruising old style before the apps came along. I guess you could call Hampstead Heath a geolocation app. If you went and you wandered around, it's kind of old school. So I'm showing here both Hampstead Heath and Chariot Sauna in Vauxhall, where I think it's much harder to negotiate boundaries, since the cruising code is generally that silence prevails when you're engaged in the process. It's important, therefore, to discuss with clients how you will handle meeting each other outside of the consulting room at the beginning of therapy. And now many clients say they'd be happy to say hello and not ignore me. But they may not have considered that this could out them as a client if I'm not alone, because the people I'm with will say, well, how do you know so-and-so? But the conversation with the client needs to go beyond acknowledging an acknowledging nod across a bar, a crowded bar like that. And what about when one or other of you might be wasted in a club, or in a context where you don't want to be acknowledged, like a sauna or a sex party, or they come across your profile online? Having agreed a way of handling this, along the lines outlined in the chapter that I've given you the link for, and having a professional boundaries statement, which I'm going to come on to, is crucial to managing the change in perception that out-of-session contact might bring. Now, some of you will have heard of FetLife. It's like a kinky Facebook. It's very big and popular, and it's a place where people can list events, both social events like munches, which are where kinky people wear regular clothes and go to regular pubs and chat with each other, and play events where people might be arranging play parties or dungeon parties or whatever. People create a profile and have a photo gallery facility within that. And then there are forums where discussions on all kinds of fetish and psychological issues take place. I'd recommend considering having separate personal and professional profiles with no publicly visible face pic on your private profile where you list what you're into. When we discussed this in the ACD Kink group, I learned that many of the therapists in that group, unsurprisingly, had a FetLife professional profile, and they were keeping these two things separate. But I think I was the only person who had my face on my professional profile, which surprised me. But I think it shows perhaps how wary and worried we are about being judged or recognised by others who could be looking at those profiles more casually. I've rarely had any clients from FetLife, so it's not a great marketing tool in that regard. But I learn a lot about the communities and from the forums, and I've used the forums to inform other therapists about the ACD Kink group, and as a result, we've had more members join. So it's been useful in that sense. I'm going to touch on the implications for those of us that attend kink or pansexual play parties, where clients, ex-clients, former clients might be present, and how we manage our professional boundaries in those situations. In the ACD discussions, people found it easier to be in the dominant role or the giver role at public play parties, and said that being a submissive, if they were seen by clients or colleagues, could feel very challenging, if not shaming, to be receiving an over-the-knee, for example, an over-the-knee spanking, or kneeling between the boots of a hot dom. It's slightly easier, perhaps, if we're involved in undertaking more educational demonstrations and modelling good, safe, consensual practice by doing a bondage demonstration or a piercing demonstration or something, because these were felt to be less problematic. But any genital or sexual contact, and obviously that's not required to be doing BDSM or kink, would happen in a private room or in a private space away from and or separately to the event. It's a particular challenge for kinky folk who get off on exhibitionism and public play, if that's part of the thing that is part of their arousal template. And some kinksters will often restrict play to when they're going abroad or when they're out of town in a different city. I think there tends to be a code of discretion at those kinds of events, though, akin to Chatham House rules. What happens in the playroom stays in the playroom, but you can't necessarily rely upon that. And so I think it is important to be careful. Since our professional associations have been slow to offer culturally sensitive, ethical boundaries and guidance, I think it's incumbent upon each of us to create our own. And here's a link to mine on my website, which I especially ask my kink-identified clients to read, and then we discuss. Feel free to download it and amend it to suit yourself and your life. I myself adapted it from an American therapist who we found on FetLife. We don't have probably too long to engage in the conversations that I'd love us to be having here, but please feel free to email me and maybe come along to the ACD Kink group if that feels appropriate for you. Thank you very much for your attention.